Many instructional designers who have been in the field for years or even decades find that when it comes time to show off their work in a portfolio, they don't have many projects to choose from because all of those projects are either confidential or bound by non-disclosure agreements. So in this video, we'll talk about what you can do if you find yourself in that position. So you have these skills and these projects and you want to show them off to the world so that you can land more work or better opportunities. Makes sense. Let's look at your options for how to do so. So the first option, of course, is to actually request permission to show off that project on your portfolio. So the way to do this is to just ask, can you discuss your process and include some screenshots? Odds are, if this is a proprietary project, you're probably not going to be able to include a link to the final project, right? So a good middle ground is to just take a few screenshots of some well-designed slides, talk about your process, how you approach this problem, and what you did to help solve it, okay? So this is a conversation that you would have either with your client if you're freelancing, and something I do and I would highly recommend doing if you are freelancing is set these expectations up front. So have that conversation with your client before you even sign any paperwork and get that portfolio permission. So in your contract, have this language that, when you complete this project, you will be able to discuss it publicly, show off some screenshots, talk about your process, and even include the client's logo on your site. I have a whole video about freelance e-learning contract must-haves, so check that one out first if you are freelancing. But if you're not and you've been a full-time employee, I would suggest just asking your manager or supervisor to start for permission to talk about that project on your portfolio site. If they're unable to grant that permission, then they can probably tell you who can, and you may have some discussions about how to modify that project to make it appropriate for the public. Okay, so this is option one. Just request permission, be very upfront with your employer or your client, and see how you both can come to an agreement about what you can and cannot show off to the world. So option number two, and this is an option that a lot of people go with, is to remove the confidential information. Okay, so this is a common approach where you would change the text. You would either change it to lorem ipsum, Latin text, in case the specific content isn't important and you just want to show off the interactivity or the visual designs, or you can just make it more generic. I've seen people do that too. Instead of talking about the company's specific internal processes, they just draw from a Wikipedia page about that kind of process more generally to fill in the content. You can change the color scheme so that you cannot tell who the project is for. You wouldn't have these identifying branded colors, for example. You can remove any proprietary images and diagrams and swap them out with something else. But the main problem here, even if you do all of these things, you swap out the logo, you swap out all of the text. In most contracts I've seen, and I'm not a lawyer, right? So obviously talk to a lawyer if you want actual legal opinions about this. But I think in many cases, any work you do when you are working for a company is that company's work. So any files you're working on, anything you're creating, I think generally it belongs to that company. So even if you're swapping out these identifying texts, you may still be in a gray area. It may not be a very good choice, at least if you don't have permission and you haven't gotten it approved. So the safest option of them all, which is option three, is to create new projects. Probably not what you want to hear, but hear me out because there are some huge pros to doing this. So one, the most obvious thing, even if the file may belong to the company you're working for, your skills belong to you, right? No one can take that away from you. If you've been working for years or decades, you obviously have some very well-developed skills and you can use them to create a new deliverable much more quickly than you would have at the beginning of your career. So what I would suggest doing is using those skills to create a new and maybe even similar project. So now instead of, how can we swap out this text we already have, it's how can we solve maybe the same or a similar problem for an imaginary client. And that's how you can do a concept piece and make it exactly to your specs and standards so that you can show off your skills in the best light to anyone viewing your portfolio. So yeah, there's that next bullet point. you don't have any clients to answer to. You don't have any pressing demands like where you need something done next week and you can't give it your all. When it comes to your portfolio, it's and especially when it's on these projects that you're creating specifically for your portfolio. Again, you can show off your skills exactly how you want to show them off. You can show off your thought process in the best light. There are no client expectations to kind of like diminish what you can do as a learning designer or developer. And then finally, this is another good opportunity to help people learn more about who you are. So instead of just showing off these dry topics that you may have been working on before, you can create a learning project about something that's important to you. And this can make for a much better conversation when it comes to a client discovery call or even an interview for a full-time position. When these projects lead into who you are as a person and you can speak about them very passionately, and maybe in interviews, you can, of course, you can talk about how you did similar things for the company you worked for and what results that led to. But yeah, I mean, creating new projects, safe choice. You will for sure have something that you're happy with because you are the one who is signing off on it essentially. So if you do want some ideas about which projects to create or just some guidance overall about how to develop your instructional design or e-learning portfolio, I have a whole video on that topic, which I will link in the top right in the description below. If you found this video helpful, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Drop a comment if you have any tips or suggestions that I overlooked. And I'm also, of course, happy to answer any questions. So I will see you in the next video.